Hey everybody, welcome to the Song Revolution podcast, brought to you by Nashville Christian Songwriters. Nashville Christian Songwriters exists to empower Christian songwriters worldwide. I'm John Chisholm, and this podcast exists to bring you valuable songwriting insights, inspiration, interviews, and just all around good fun with some of the greatest songwriters, producers, arrangers, artists, and creatives, and beyond. You can find out a whole lot more about us at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com.
Hey everybody, John Chisholm here. Thanks so much for joining me on the Song Revolution podcast. I've got Dan Dean on the show today, and I think you're going to love Dan. Dan is the dean of Phillips, Craig & Dean, who formed a group about 26 years ago when I was A&R director at Star Song Media here in Nashville, never dreaming that they would have a 25-year and counting ride with this thing and be looking back on over 2 million units of their music sold, millions of miles traveled. Who knows how many hotel rooms and churches and auditoriums and venues that they've seen the green room of, but they're just all great guys, and I think you're going to enjoy Dan Dean as he shares today about what this journey of PCD has been for them, some surprises along the way, his songwriting process, and what the future might hold for PCD. So again, thanks for being here. Sit back and enjoy Dan Dean on the Song Revolution podcast. Dan Dean, man, welcome to the show. It is so good to have you.
Thanks, John. Great to visit with you today.
Wow. Well, the pleasure is all mine, and I'm just so stoked for the listeners here of the Song Revolution podcast because today, guys, on the show, we have a wealth of talent and experience. And, you know, one of the veteran guys like me here, Dan Dean, man, of Phillips, Craig & Dean, you heard in the intro, just so many of the amazing things that have happened in the last 25 years. And, man, we're thankful, Dan, for what God's done in your life.
It has been a great journey. And it's ironic. We come full circle, John. This journey started for me. I did my first independent project. It was a solo project, custom project that we did here in Dallas. And it's amazing. This thing is full circle because somehow I still to this day don't know how you got a copy of that project. And the next thing I knew, I really had no contacts in Nashville at all. I was just a local guy in Dallas trying to get my music out there and do what I'm doing for the Lord. And I get a call from a guy named John Chisholm, who I didn't know a lot about. And I do believe now, looking back, God strategically had somebody put that cassette tape in your hand.
I think an angel appeared to me or something. I think something happened. It was
whoever it was, it definitely was an angel in my life. And I got this call, and through your kindness to me, I had songs off of that project that were recorded by some major artists, and eventually, I think it was about maybe a year following that, you helped me get on what's called the New Artist Showcase. It was at the GMA week in Nashville at that time. Brought a band up. I'll never forget it because I left the Monday after my daughter was born on a Sunday to come to Nashville.
Wow. I didn't know that part. I'd forgotten that part.
And we sang, and I sat around and waited because everybody told me, man, you sing at this thing, you're going to get signed. And I waited, and nothing happened. This is the case so many times. So I don't know how much time passed, and I told my wife, I'm just going to do what I do in the local church, and if nothing happens beyond that, so be it. I'm going to be content. And it wasn't probably 2 weeks after that I get a call from Randy, who is the Phillips of this group, and he said, "Hey, let's do a trio album. Let's find a third guy that's a writer, and let's do a trio album, and we'll all invest $5,000, and we'll travel just enough to break even. That was our big goal, is to break even. And we never got to do that custom project. We came together in Dallas, did 3 songs, one each that we had written, and Randy sent it to some folks in Nashville, and then the rest is history. We came up to Nashville, I believe it was December of 91, if I'm remembering correctly, and we did a showcase concert for about 3 record companies, and about 2 weeks later, Star Song Records called and said, "Hey, let's do an album. I want to sign a contract." It has been a great journey, a lot of fun.
Wow, it has been, and congratulations on that to all 3 of you guys. And one of my greatest regrets in my whole Christian music career is that I didn't hang around long enough at Star Song to work with you guys. Jackie Patillo, who is now president of the Gospel Music Association, she wound up being your A&R director.
She was.
Right? And kicking off that first record, man, it's so long ago. We were still making cassettes, and I don't know if CDs were they around when you made that first one.
I think they were there, but it was cutting edge.
Yeah, right. It's so funny, but I'm just so grateful to have been a small part of that, and I remember kind of connecting with each of you guys in some way, and then just watching how it happened and took off, man. And just wow. It's just amazing, when you look.
What's really amazing is it was so contrary to how things work in that arena. Usually you go out there, you burn up the roads for 5 years, you kick up enough dust that somebody recognizes that there's some potential there, and then you sign a record deal. We had never sang together until we went into the studio for the first project. Really, I'm being serious.
Yeah, it's so funny.
And the sound was formed over the first 2 albums. The first album, I remember Jackie Patillo and Paul Mills laying their head over onto the console saying, "This is not going to work." Because we were trying to discover, who's going to be high, who's in the middle, and who's low, and it was something.
Yeah. Wow.
It was a journey, but again, it just proves it was a God thing. And then to think, I remember when I turned 40, which was not too long after our first album, I think maybe 6 years, I think it was 34. And that's giving away my age. But
yeah, I'm sitting there calculating in my head.
My wife was a little down, and my wife came in and said, What is wrong with you? You should be happy. So, well, this happened so late in life, it's probably about to be over. Because when you hit 40 in this, in the music field, it peaks. Little did I know that we were going to be around 25 years. And still, we've got 5 concerts coming up this month. So we still go places. And for some strange reason, our audience has gotten a little older.
I wonder how that happened.
That we still are able to do this is what a blessing for us.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, you've made such a rich deposit, in the body of Christ, all the songs, all the records, all the traveling, and the relationships that have been built. What's it been like with those guys on the road? You guys live in different cities. You're all still grounded as pastors in your local churches. You and I were talking before we started the show today about the fact that you were the worship leader at your church where you are for, did you say 15 years? Before you transitioned to be lead pastor for the last 18 years while being, Phillips, Greg, and Dean. Wow. How did that happen, man? How did you manage that?
I remember the first year we were in a van going somewhere to sing on a 2 or 3 day run that we were doing. And I think it was Randy said, "Guys, what happens if this thing really goes somewhere and we sell some albums, and what are we going to do regarding the church?" And we made a decision on that van ride that day that we were going to maintain our jobs with the church as long as they were willing to work with us, because we felt that was important and an important piece of who we were. And to this day, Sean is now pastor of the church where he was plugged in. Randy planted a church out of his church in Austin. And I'm still at the same church. It's like we're still very connected to the same churches that we were a part of 25 years ago. And that's pretty remarkable. Just that you would be, just say I was a worship pastor, to be somewhere that long would be kind of unheard of.
Oh yeah, totally.
Even now, being a pastor here this long is kind of unheard of, but that's the way it's worked. And it's been a great compliment one to the other. Being part of the group has helped our churches to flourish. And our churches have seen, I think, increase with growth, and it's helped our churches grow. On the same side of that, we've been blessed by being part of people who knew us before, there was a record deal, who heard our songs when nobody else was hearing those songs. And generally, the church here is still they're the first ones to hear if I have a new song I've written. They're my test run to say, well, that worked, or man, I usually don't tell them I wrote this song. We just do it. And then I kind of gauge it from there.
Right. Kind of float it out there and see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, what a testimony to the body of Christ, really, and to the strength that comes from being connected on a serious, deep, deep level that lasts for decades. I mean, that is unheard of, while maintaining this powerful career.
The other thing, John, is there are not a lot of groups that are still around as to when we started. There's individuals like, Stephen Curtis, Michael W. Smith, some of those. But the few groups that are around usually have different members. They're not the original members. And I think one of the reasons for our longevity has been that we weren't out there on the road, 265 dates a year. And when we did get on the road, we hadn't burned up places that, we were going into 2 or 3 times a year. And we still had a freshness with one another that it's really been a joy through the years to, I'll be out 5 days this month with these guys, and we still love each other, laugh, have a good time, get along. There's been a few times that I can remember in 25 years where we've had a serious conflict. It's been very few times that's happened, and we usually resolved it quickly. Usually involved scheduling. It wasn't like it was a major thing.
Right.
So it's been a blessing to have the church, the local church, as part of the environment that helps shape us and continues to.
Yeah, that just feels more kingdom oriented to me than just, hey, I'm an artist and I'm going to come into your church and do my thing, because you guys as pastors live the reality of the mundane nature of week to week church. And the I call it the slimy underbelly of the body of Christ. You understand the ins and outs and the pains and the turmoil and the heartache that people go through. So, when you go out there and sing or go to a church and perform, you're there really, I think, in a deeper way. I mean, have you felt that?
Oh yeah. I think we can relate so much to a pastor, to a staff, going into a church. I can remember going to a church in Illinois early on, where when we walked into the building to sing that night, we got word like 20 minutes before the concert that one of the staff members had lost his daughter.
Mm.
And you don't go into that kind of environment and you say, well, let's do our show. You totally have to change directions. And I think being what we've been with the church gives us a flexibility. And this is certainly not a knock on those folks that are, I mean, we did the touring thing as well. We would do 30, 40 day tours early on, but we always came back home on Sundays. It was hard. I remember catching an early flight one night from Philadelphia it was an early Sunday morning, and we had to drive 2 hours to get to the airport. So it was like 3 a.m., lobby call, and flying into Dallas and going straight to the church and having a rehearsal. And early on, we were still having Sunday morning, Sunday night service. That was a challenge. Somehow we made it.
Yeah.
I have a few wrinkles, but I wear them with pride.
There you go. You earned every one of them, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So all of you, all these years have made it number one priority to be back in your pulpits on Sunday morning.
That's right. In fact, now we very seldom, maybe three times a year, miss a Sunday. One of those would generally be for Brooklyn Tabernacle. We go once a year to sing there. That's one of those places and experiences you go, well, we'll miss a Sunday for Brooklyn Tabernacle.
Yeah, exactly.
Such a fun place to sing and have a great relationship there. So,
Yeah, Jim and Carol Sembala, just amazing ministry and have touched the world with Brooklyn Tab, of course, as have you guys. So, so Brooklyn Tab obviously be one of your favorite places to go. What have been some of the highlights that you'd say, wow, I so glad we got to do that. Of course, every ministry opportunity is to be valued, but
Oh wow, that's tough. But I will tell you that one of these just happened this year, which was a lifelong dream. We sang at Carnegie Hall.
Oh, that's awesome! Yeah, I remember saying that.
And just being in that building and walking through, knowing all the people that have been on that stage, it was amazing and a great night of worship. Excuse me, and I don't know. There's just been so many great moments. We've had one of the best areas of our top sales areas in a place where people have totally come to worship with us when we've been out on the road. It's in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area. So many great experiences there, including one night when we were there. We usually get into a routine of what we do before a concert, and they asked if we would meet a man who probably was his last public event. He had brain cancer, and one of his bucket list items was to come to a Phillips, Craig, and Dean concert.
Oh, man.
So we couldn't say, no, we can't meet with him. You meet, and the whole family's back there, and he's trying to talk, and at this moment his motor skills are just not cooperating with what his mind is wanting to say, and they're trying to tell us what he's communicating, and you're his favorite group, and so we were pretty much a wreck when we got to stage, as you can imagine. And they brought him and put him almost front and center, right on the front row. And so you just were trying to avert your eyes from looking over there. But we started singing, Let My Words Be Few. Mm-hmm. And there's this commotion. And it's like his arms are flailing. And Randy and I later said we thought he was dying right there.
Yeah.
But we realized when we got to the chorus, so I'll stand in awe of you, that he was wanting to stand. And his big sons lifted him up on each side. And man, what a moment. I'll never forget it. And a few days later, he passed. But this guy, one of my great all times memories of them lifting him up so he could stand to worship to one of our songs. It was incredible.
Wow. That's a pretty unforgettable moment, right? Wow. And it's probably those moments you think all the flights and hotels and everything you've gone through,
everything worth it.
Yeah. It's all worth it. It's why you did it, right?
I was speaking along those lines. I was part of a great song on our second album, Want to Be Just Like You, which Sean really had a friend that brought him that idea. And a lady that had no kids came up with that idea. And I have had so many couples come through the years and say, we had that at our child died at 1 year old, and that's what we played. And, just to think you've been a part of people's lives is really, really totally a blessing for us. And I know that that's the case in my life, that there are songs, there are periods of time that there's a song memory that triggers things with me. And I'll go back in time and remembers, with great emotion, things that have happened in my life due to a song. And to think that you've had the ability and the platform to be able to do that for others is truly a gift.
It really is. I'm not sure that any of us will ever know the full impact of our lives. Of course, it's the Christmas season right now, so I recently kind of napped through It's a Wonderful Life, and a great reminder, the fact that we don't really know the ripples. We don't know how important we are, but when you look at, over 2 million units, sold, so few people really get to do that. And all the number one songs, all the awards, but those things represent real people and real lives that this side of heaven, you don't know. Your songs have blessed me and my family. Gosh, I mean, sure, thousands of times, as we've been blessed through the years. And, I think I'm going to forgive you for not recording one of mine somewhere along the way, but maybe this podcast will make up for that.
I don't know why we haven't written more, John.
I know, man.
You left Star Song too early. That's
I did. I know, man. I kind of missed it there, but
had our publishing, which you know what that means when they're going to get you paired with somebody, they're going to want you to one of their writers if possible.
Yeah.
That was the reason, or we just never made it happen. But
well, I kind of went on into the worship thing. That was 92 when I started down at Integrity. It was in Mobile, Alabama at that point. It's now in Nashville. But God had done just a huge work in my life, and I really just wanted to worship. And that was when Integrity called. It was like, wow, I have got to go do this, and wound up doing some great things there. So thankful for that. But I've watched you, man. I've watched you through the years. And
our first, I don't know, 5 or 6 albums, worship has always been the heart of who we were. But our companies never wanted us early on to do the worship thing. And it was kind of the pop sounding, radio friendly, So when we did our first album, it was Let My Words Be Few, and it was way on down the road. But it was not with Star Song. It was with who were we with after that? Remind me. We got
Sparrow.
Sparrow, that's it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, we had to beg and plead then, and that album kind of revitalized our career. Nathan Knuckles produced. We really came full circle as to doing what we really love to do.
Yeah. Great. Those are great records, though. Let Your Glory Fall in 03, following Let My Words Be Few. You're doing all the Let Let my words be few. Let your glory fall. Let the worshipers arise.
Yeah, there you go.
But all those were with Nathan. Looks like producer, great producer, and you've Top of My Lungs, one of my favorites. I love that one, and worked with Bernie Herms, back with Nathan and Bernie, and now looks like is the most recent one Above It All with Seth Mosley and Nathan.
That's the last, I guess, real studio project. Well, we just did a hymns album that was it's about out a year now. It's not with a label, but we had a ton of fun doing the hymns album, and it was basically we took 10 songs from our childhood, put the PCD twist on them, and we are having a blast going around touring with that thing. We're calling what we do right now on our dates hits and hymns, I think is the. So we'll take one half of the concert and do, a look back through the years at some of our hits, and the second half will be doing some of the older songs from our history of the past, down at the cross. And we've had a lot of fun with that hymns album, though.
A little tongue in cheek here, Dan. What's your favorite song of all?
Oh, man. Are you talking about that we've recorded?
Yeah.
Well, that changes from day to day. I tell you what, currently probably the song that I love to sing the most, and it seems to be having the most impact right now, is a song that Randy and Matthew West wrote called "Tell Your Heart to Beat Again."
Oh my goodness, what a song!
It's a number one song for
Danny Gokey.
And I don't think he does nearly as well on his vocal as I do, but it's okay.
He's trying. Maybe he'll come along.
He's trying to get better. No, seriously, the song itself is, and the way that song was born. Randy has a pastor friend that's this type A adrenaline junkie, and he talked his way into witnessing an open heart surgery. And he was kind of prepped ahead of time as here's what's going to happen. We're going to bring this lady in, saw open the chest cavity and pull it back, take the heart out. And we stop the heart beating. We let it, outside the body. We have to stop it from beating. So they're running the blood through this machine. And he said, we finished the repairs. We put the heart in. And the body is so fearfully and wonderfully made that generally I just have to massage the heart a little and it starts beating. And this doctor watched all this barbaric process, and they did all the reattachment, put the heart back in, and he rubbed the heart and nothing happened. Then they go to more extreme measures. Still nothing happens. And the pastor's thinking he's about to lose this lady. And the doctor walks around to the end of the gurney and he leans down and whispers in this lady's ear, Mrs. Johnson, this is your doctor. The surgery has been successful. Your heart has been repaired. Tell your heart to beat again. And boom, that thing just somewhere in the subconscious recesses of that woman's soul, her brain sent a signal to her heart. And it's a remarkable story. And Randy and Matthew did an incredible job. And it's just been an encouragement to a lot of people who find themselves in that place. They're alive, but they're not really alive. And the price has been paid. Jesus, died for their sins, but for different reasons, whether it be self-inflicted or somebody's brought pain to them, their heart is not beating. And yet the master stands saying, hey, forget what has happened and tell your heart to beat again. You have been made whole through Christ. So probably right now it's my favorite song to sing. And ministers to me, and it really ministers to people. Every time we do it, we get comments. It's just a great one.
Wow. Absolutely. I mean, that song's, it's crazy good. And what a great story, wow. Now that's how to find a hook, right?
That is.
That's a good segue into talking about your song process and the hits that you have written or co-written, through the years, and maybe take us a little bit into your process and how you identify hooks and develop them a little bit.
Well, I'm kind of old school, John. The thing I have learned about songwriting is it's great to know the rules, and it's great to know, how to do things correctly. Once you know all that, throw it all out the window because, who knows what makes what work. What I do know is that I think to have a great song, you have to find something that touches an emotion that's common in people. And you have to flesh that out and develop it in a way musically or lyrically that is different from what has happened before. There's no new thing under the sun. Every subject's been broached and addressed. You just have to figure out a way to say it differently. And you have to be aware sometimes of these little nuggets that can come, because if you're not looking for them, you will miss them. I've learned that you have to write stuff down when it comes to you and keep careful track of what God entrusts to you with those moments. There's a great speaker that spoke at our church not long ago. His last name is Lusko, Levi Lusko, and he talked about seeing things that nobody else sees and God helping you to do that. And he used the illustration of the FedEx logo, how that they narrowed down these logos to about 5, brought it into the founder of the company, and they were laying out, said, which one do you like? He said, I like the one with the arrow. John, in all these years of looking at FedEx logos, I've never seen the arrow until he pointed it out to us that day. And it's there now. I can't look at it and not see it, but it's clear evidence of how you can hear things and not hear, or you see things and you don't see. So I've learned through the years, if I get a nugget, I have to immediately, now with electronic media, get on my phone and jot down the idea. The idea to me is the biggest thing to get. And what I've learned, I think I'm pretty sure early on it was you. It was either you or John Barker that really encouraged me to co-write, because I did all my writing myself. And I remember the first time I ever did a co-write, I had an idea. I've learned a lot about co-writing. First of all, is nobody wants you to bring a finished product. Really good writers just want the idea because they want to be able to create. I used to come in with a verse and a chorus and half of another verse and say, help me write this song. They hate that. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, you just want me to finish it for you. So the idea is important. And these great writers in Nashville and the places I get now, I'm able to co-write with, they love a great idea, because they are really good at what they do. And if I can bring them a great idea, we'll have a great song, generally speaking. And so the first time I ever co-write was with the friends of yours, Don Cook and Dave Clark. And I had an idea. I'm in my early 30s at this point. I had an idea from a message that I had heard when I was 16 years old. And the phrase of that message that kept coming back was, mercy came running.
Mercy came running.
That's it.
Great
thought of mercy being trapped in the Old Testament behind a veil. begging to get out, saying, if I could get out, I could make a difference in the life of Uzzah, the guy that reached to steady the ark, or Achan and his whole family is stoned because he makes a mistake. And Mercy said, please let me out of here. When I presented that idea to Dave and Don, it was like they instantly started heavy into the salivating area. You could just
and, they probably got
at that point the value of co-writing and what great writers can bring to the table and help you do with a great idea.
That's it, isn't it? I mean, I've been on that soapbox, man, for months now. It's like, please, please, please spend time on your ideas before you even try to write. You know, don't sit down with an empty head and just try to write out of nothing. Yeah. You know, come to the table with a great idea, like Mercy came running.
I will say this, that recently I wrote with Tony Wood and Don Porthras, who I've written with before. And Tony, who's just a machine.
29 number one hits and counting. I mean, he may have already had another number one.
I asked him last time, I said, Tony, how many songs have you had recorded? And I think if I remember correct, Johnny told me he's had over 800 songs recorded on projects.
I had him on the show, and that's true.
And he may have given you this quote, but man, it was so good. He said, he was talking to a young writer, and he said, the difference between me and you is this. You write when you're inspired. I write until I'm inspired. And what a great quote. And, these guys are so gifted, and the value of co-writing cannot be, you can't underestimate people who have a gift and who do it vocationally all the time,
Yeah, it's a different world. And as we work with a lot of aspiring writers, it's like just write and write and write. Now, do I remember, as you're talking, that first cassette I heard of yours, was there a song, forgive me if I'm totally wrong, but was there a song on there about letters, or it was about the Bible?
Called
the word, something about
the letter.
The letter, okay.
He whispers, come to me. Yeah, that was a very sweet song with just vocal and keyboard, written by the guy that produced that album, Nate Saban.
That I remember that well. That was a standout to me.
Yeah, great song. Yeah, it was. And again, going back to this thing, but for that album, I had been writing for 6, 7, 8 years. I had a few songs that had been recorded by artists, namely Lanny Wolf back in the day.
Right.
His wife did a couple of my songs on a project, but up until that point, I'd not really had a lot of success. But everything I did was on my own. I was just totally writing by myself, and Nate produced that first album, and soon after that we started doing a lot of co-writing, and I realized the value of iron sharpening iron.
Absolutely.
Somebody looking and saying, that doesn't make sense. What are you trying to say? You're not getting to the point fast enough. You got to turn it quicker, and the value of somebody being really honest with you.
That's really what it's about, isn't it? Bringing the gifts that we have and putting them together for, some great things to happen. Well, tell us a little bit about what's to come. You have the Hits and Hymns thing going on now, a new CD out, and touring. And what do you see on the horizon for PCD?
Oh, well, we still are very active as much as we want to be, which is amazing. We've already got on the calendar for next year quite a few dates, including an Alaskan tour with Michael W. Smith, and I think Christy Knuckles is on that. I can't remember all the folks. We're doing a PCD Israel trip in October of 18. I'm trying to think of other things we've got on the calendar. I think there's we have two blocks next year where we're doing what we call a mini tour. For us, a tour nowadays consists of 7 to 10 dates and being on the road. It's really hard. It's harder now to book dates on a Monday, Tuesday. So we'll go out a Wednesday through a Sunday. We'll do a run, and then maybe the next Thursday, Friday be out. But we're entering into a different season of our career, and I don't know that we totally know what all God has in store. I will tell you this: at least 3 times in over the course of the last 25 years, we've thought, well, it's over. It felt that way in reality when we did our Restoration album. Ironically, some of my favorite music is on that album, but it was our next to last album with Sparrow, and it was our lowest selling album. And we all thought, well, this is kind of it, I guess. And then Sparrow, I think maybe out of desperation, said, okay, you can do a praise and worship album. Nathan did I Let My Words Be Few, and I'm telling you, it totally resurrected our career.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had this entire other chapter where Nathan did, I think, maybe 5 albums with us. And we were thinking, well, excuse me, we were thinking this is probably the end. And then Bernie Herms agreed to produce, and we had our biggest hit ever, Revelation song. That I don't know if you've heard the story behind that whole how that happened.
Mm-mm. Share it.
But we were having meetings with our record company about the song selection for the album, and we had just gone, speaking of Brooklyn Tabernacle, and sang at Brooklyn Tabernacle and did a workshop with them. And we taught the choir Revelation song. Brooklyn Tabernacle choir sang it. And I'm telling you, it was, wow. It was like crazy. The presence of God was in that place. So we came back to the record company and said, we have to do this song. Maybe we can get the Brooklyn Tabernacle choir to even sing with us. And they were like, they came back and said, this, guys, we just don't get it. It's like 4 chords and, one of those deals where you're in a war trying to say this works. I don't know how to explain it. It just works. And then we eventually just kind of said, we're going to do this song. Just trust us. So they agreed to do it. Going into the studio, Bernie's producing this album, and Bernie's like, he is such a perfectionist, and that vocal was, oh my goodness, just I think 2 days on this lead vocal, which is a long time to spend on a lead vocal. Finally, we're to the end, and he said, what should we do on the ending? And I said, Bernie, it doesn't matter. This song's been out for a while. It's never going to see the light of day. Don't worry about this on radio. Just fade it. It's not any big deal. So they take the product into the record company, and Dan Michaels comes back and says, Revelation song has got to be the first radio single. And now we're going, no, that'll never work. That will never work. It's been around too long. It's, Carrie Job recorded this. But it's one of those deals where God was involved in something, because they ended up putting their foot down. And we got our first digital gold single with that, 500,000 downloads.
That's great.
And it's one of those now that's kind of a signature song that the intro starts, and It's easily recognized by people. And wow, it's been a great song for us to sing across the country. So,
wow. Well, you've had such a tremendous blend of cover songs and your own, and just what a legacy of song. And I'd like to just take a moment as we start to wrap up here and just acknowledge you and the other guys for the amazing contribution that you've made to the body of Christ and to the world, and the lives that have been touched. As we were talking earlier, you won't know this side of heaven, man, but congratulations in a godly, amazing way for what you've done, man. We love and appreciate you guys so much for this amazing legacy of song.
Thanks, John. I just have to tell you that it's been a God journey. We gave our gifts to Him. We made ourselves available. Our lead pastors recognized, thankfully, that this was God at work, gave us liberty to do what we've done with the group. And we've just been blessed to get on the bus and see where God has taken it and enjoy His blessings. And it's all the credit goes to Him.
Mm-hmm. Well, what would you say to aspiring songwriters listening today? I always like to kind of wrap up the show with just a quick word. I mean, what would you say to encourage the writers that are listening?
I think I'd say a couple things. Number one is the message I talked about a little earlier on, that you have to have your ears tuned, your eyes open. Songs are all around us every day. And you have to be plugged in to when God's going to drop that nugget in, and then record it in some way so you don't lose it. I've experienced that. I've had a great idea and did write it down, and then later it's gone. But probably more importantly, the thing I've learned over the course of these years of songwriting is never be offended when people come to help make your product better. Early on, as a writer, it's somebody said it this way: nobody ever has an ugly baby, right? Everybody's baby's cute. We had our son Dusty. My wife's on a plane a few weeks later, and so this lady says, "Oh, he looks just like E.T.," which was not a compliment. My wife was gravely offended, but I later looked at him, and he did kind of look like E.T. He turned into a handsome guy, but we're that way with our babies sometimes. We never create an ugly baby. I write a song, and I think it's great. And there's been times I go into my wife, who's my best critic, because she will just tell me straight out, "I don't have a clue what you're trying to say," or "What do you mean by that?" Or, well, it's clear. Can't you get it through your, Then I go back and examine and say, you know what? She's right. Nobody ever has an ugly baby when it comes to songwriting. Whenever you write something, you're excited, pumped. And I told you, I test everything generally on our church. I don't tell them, I don't get up and say, "I wrote this song today," because then they're going to be like, they're going to respond well. I know, because they love me. But I usually can get a good indication of if it's going to touch somebody or not. In that, if somebody's really moved outside of my mother, and I'll never get that happen with a song that I wrote on one of our worship tunes called "Pour My Love on You," and we wrote that song on a Wednesday. I taught it to our group on I think a Thursday night rehearsal. We sang it on Sunday. I'm telling you, it was one of those moments where, wow, heaven just fell into place. And I said, "God, you really worked through us on this one. This is going to be good." And but you have to go through, and I did on that song. Even I had to make a correction of a line or two. That somebody came to me and said, "There's I don't think you mean this in this line," and we corrected some things. But it's just, you constantly look to make the craft, the song better. And I see that in a lot of beginning songwriters. They get real touchy about, don't mess with my baby. And criticism will only help make it better if it's coming from the right sources. So get over it and understand you're not perfect, and you're working continually to make your craft better, to make your gift better. And don't take it personal. Just, if you get all your limbs chopped off, get up and grow some more, because it's going to happen.
Yeah.
In fact, I wrote a song not long ago with Tony and Don. We wrote a country tune I had an idea for. I think Tony pitched it to, I was really feeling like we got a really good song here. Pitched it to some of his country friends. It's going to have a hard time making it. I still think it's a good tune, but you get up and go, okay, back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
Another idea.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Dan, man, I know we could talk for another hour. This is rich, and again, just blown away with what God has done through you guys. And I'm gonna work on getting the other two on the show. Maybe we'll have all three of you one day and talk a little bit more and get some of their perspective. But thank you for dude. Thanks for your time being here. And
thanks, John. It was a great opportunity for me, and I hope young writers out there, new writers, don't necessarily need to be young. There's older writers maybe just getting their feet in the water, and I hope they're encouraged today to get out there and make it happen. Keep writing, and you have a good song, it'll rise. It'll go where it needs to go.
I believe that. Now, what's the best way for folks to follow you guys? I know you got phillipscraiganddean.com, Instagram. What are you, PCD Guys?
PCD Guys on Instagram. My personal Instagram is Dan PCD, I think. We have a Facebook page. Google it. I'm kind of illiterate when it comes to technology. But
Dan, man, well,
look at our internet homepage, phillipscraig.com. Find out when we're coming to your area, and we'd love to see people out on the road. Appreciate you, man, and thanks a lot for the opportunity.
You too, bud. Thanks.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show today. I'm blown away with the encouragement and inspiration that every guest brings, and today was certainly no different. If you want even more encouragement and inspiration to take your songwriting to the next level, be sure to check out NCS membership over on our site at NashvilleChristianSongwriters.com. We're all about empowering you to become the best Christian songwriter that you can be, and NCS membership is simply the fastest and easiest way to get there. Become the songwriter that you were born to be by joining NCS membership today. I'll see you next time on the Song Revolution Podcast.